So like 70 years ago, everywhere 100 miles in every direction was leased out by this logging company. And everything was way more remote back then, so they would set up shops in the camp and sell like razors and soap to the loggers. But they would jack up the prices like. Johnny's dad was the guy that ran these stores, and they hated him for it. And they used to take out their anger on Johnny. It all came to a head one day when one of the drunk loggers tripped and broke his ankle on one of Johnny's toy cars. He was out of work for months. They would blame Johnny for it. So they decided to teach him a lesson. They told Johnny they found a bag of toys and that he should meet them at the old fire tower. So Johnny snuck out camp at night, and eager and keen and naive as he was, he climbed up the top of the tower, but there were no toys. Just one of the men in a creepy old firefighter's mask waiting to scare him. And he did. Johnny fell from the tower. His neck snapped as soon as it hit the ground. And the men freaked out, so they put one of the firefighter masks on him to make it look like he was playing up there by himself, and tripped and fell.
So are you saying that was the same fire tower from earlier?
Could be. Hard to say.
What is up, horror fanatics? Zomboy here. Today we're going to be talking about 2024's In a Violent Nature. This movie is directed by Chris Nash. It is rated R. And I'll read a quick plot synopsis. When a locket is removed from a collapsed fire tower in the woods that entombs the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by the horrific 70-year-old crime, his body is resurrected that becomes hell-bent on retrieving it. This movie is rated 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb. It is rated 2.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I think I'm gonna put a little bit of a disclaimer on. This one is probably not for everybody. It is a classic style slasher movie, but it is done different than any other slasher movie I've ever seen before. This one's neat because it is kind of like a slasher versus campers, kind of. But it is from the perspective of the slasher. So with this movie, instead of following the camp counselors or campers throughout the movie with the slasher coming in to do the kills, this one primarily sticks on Johnny after he's been reanimated. So you learn that Johnny was basically a special needs kid that was picked on by the local kids. His dad owned a store that was selling things that people couldn't afford, and so people were getting upset. They decided to play a prank on Johnny, and they lured him up into a fire lookout and was gonna scare him. One of the guys dressed up in an old fireman's gear, and when he scared him, Johnny fell off the fire lookout to his death. And then you find out Johnny's dad is really upset and tries to confront one of the fathers of the kids that killed him, and he ends up dying. The parent ends up killing Johnny's dad and claims self-defense. So Johnny comes back and they say that he killed them all, or somebody killed them all, and the town covers it up by paying off the families of the deceased and saying it was contaminated water or food or something like that that killed them. So story is basically he's at rest underground, and this movie starts off with these kids in a cemetery, and there's a collapsed fire lookout, and they find a necklace, and they end up taking the necklace. So this necklace is what is actually holding Johnny at rest, and so by taking the necklace, he reanimates as an undead to come back to retrieve his necklace. So the movie, I tried to start this movie once before, and the first 5 minutes it is one shot. It doesn't move, and you hear audio from characters having a conversation as they're doing stuff in the background, but it does not pan away from that. And the first time I watched it, I didn't care for it, and I ended up turning the movie off. And I was glad I went back to watch it because it definitely has an art twist to it, but it's great. There's no music playing in the background on this. When Johnny's in the forest, it's all birds and wind and sound of leaves rustling. It's really neat. It's a whole different perspective. But this movie really focuses on the kills. They are bloody. They are gross. And he was pushing it with these kills. So it's great. The year this came out, it was a contender for Best Kill, I think going against Terrifier 2, and this one took it on the yoga kill. So the first kill in this one, Johnny's walking through the forest. He ends up in a farmer's house. He thinks he sees the necklace he's looking for. He ends up, the farmer sees him and runs into the woods, and Johnny goes after him. This one is an off-scene kill. The last bit you see is the farmer getting stuck in one of his own bear traps and Johnny reaching out. And the next scene is Johnny's hand again reaching out for the necklace, but it's just covered in blood. The next kill is one of the kids. They're at camp. Johnny's following them through the woods and finds where they're staying in these cabins, and he ends up chopping half the head off this guy from the jawline, basically with a saw around a tree. That one's a pretty good kill. That really sets the pace for the kills in this one. It's well done. The next one, I think it's the next day. You got one girl swimming, the other one on the dock. The girl on the dock ends up leaving the girl swimming, and she gets pulled underwater by an unseen force, which is Johnny, because you see him walk into the water. This one is also an off-camera kill. She disappears into the water, and then she eventually floats back up. The next one is the yoga kill. So he goes straight from her, following the other girl that's doing yoga on the side of a cliff. And this one is absolutely brutal. He ends up pushing his fist and hand all the way through from her back out her front and ends up putting a hook into her head, and then he pulls a chain which breaks her neck and spine and pulls her head all the way back through her stomach and out the other side. It is brutal. It's disgusting. It is unique. I've never seen anything like it. When I first saw that kill, I mean, I hate to say it, but I was cheering a bit because I was so amazed by the creativity on it. It is just disgusting. So that is Aurora that gets killed there. So this movie is just basically Johnny following these kids, picking them off one by one with the tools he has. He's wearing some old ratty clothes with an old fire mask, using the tools from firemen back in the day. He's got a fireman's axe. He's got hooks with chains that they would use. And they're just super creative kills. Yeah, the next scene, he's going after a group of the kids. One of them gets a hatchet to the back of the head. The other one gets stabbed in the leg and then gets his head smashed with a boulder. And then the next one is another one that is super brutal. It's a ranger shows up. He knows who he is, so he's trying to talk with him. He ends up getting punched in the spine and paralyzed, where you can see he's breathing and his eyes are moving, but he can't move. And Johnny ends up taking him in to a wood splitter and has some fun with him in the wood splitter. This one's pretty brutal because the guy is completely coherent. He can't scream, he can't do anything until he's dispatched. The next one's pretty brutal as well. He's chasing a guy and a girl through the woods. This is nearing the end of the movie, and he ends up stabbing this guy in the face with his axe or hatchet, and then he's in the background as this girl's watching, and Johnny stabbed him over and over and over. I mean, it's like 150 times. He's just hitting him with this hatchet. She ends up hanging up the necklace, because she was wearing it, on a gas can, and walks away. She ends up getting to a road, tracks down a car, they pick her up, and you know, all this time, you know, the camera's showing the woods in the background, making you feel like Johnny's gonna come back, which he ends up not coming back. The end of this movie, I think, might drop it down a little bit for me, just because they really set it up with some really high tension and then kind of left you hanging. But Johnny ends up going back to rest, and this girl ends up surviving. But this movie's a lot of fun. If you like slasher movies and you're not afraid of a little bit of an art project, then this one is probably for you. It's definitely got these really drawn out, really long scenes where you follow him for minutes and minutes and minutes without a camera cut, all just following him with nothing happening but him walking through the woods. But it's really well shot. The sound is really beautiful. So if you're okay with some really slow scenes, then you'll be okay with this movie if you like slasher movies. But you know, the first time I watched this, I was not in the mood for that, and I ended up turning it off. I was really glad I went back and watched it though, because this is a brutal slasher movie, and I felt like it was different than a lot of the other ones I have seen before, even though the premise is very much like a lot of other slasher movies. So if you haven't seen this one, I suggest to go watch it. It's a lot of fun, especially maybe in a group setting. You could have some laughs. There's not a ton of comedy in it, but I found myself laughing a lot. But Johnny is definitely a force to be reckoned with. You can tell it's a child's mind and a grown man's body trying to get his necklace back. But I highly recommend it. The acting was good. Like I said, the cinematography was amazing. The score was good, but I highly recommend it. I don't think you'll be bored if you're okay with a slow, artsy style slasher movie. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. I highly recommend it. If you haven't yet, hit the like and subscribe button. I appreciate it. I'll keep these videos going. And if you have any ideas for movies for me to watch, I'll watch them and I will make a video. So put them in the comments below. I appreciate it. This is Zomboy and you're watching Twisted Terrors. I'll see you on the next one.